This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a Jacob's Ladder diff. What's up, guys? I'm here to do a breakdown / live reaction review to Lumiere's Could Yuta Actually Stop Mahoraga and Agito? And I said it in the intro, and then, you know, it may just be a little bit true. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Even if we were to be super duper generous to, let's call them Mama and Papa. If we were super generous to Mama and Papa and say they just absolutely viciously outstat Yuta, right? Because, you know, they were kind of able to keep it with Gojo and Sukuna, and obviously Gojo and Sukuna are an entirely different tier than the rest of the universe, completely disregarding any other scaling that Yuta gets later on in the Jujutsu Showdown. They are still techniques. Of course, could Yuta's traditional, like, anti-curse methods work? Not really. Like, if he tries to just RCT at either of them, they're just gonna laugh at him. But, like, he has Jacob's Ladder. He cooks them. If it's, like, a base Yuta and an unmanifested Rika versus Agito and Mahoraga, then and only then would, like, Yuta probably lose. Like, badly, too. Because, like, Rika's gonna be fighting one of them, and Yuta's gonna be fighting the other one, and he's not beating either of them. He does not have the AP to put Agito down. Not without Jacob's Ladder. At least, is that a lie? Is that a lie? No, I don't even think that's a lie. If Gojo's black flash blue punches to Agito's gut aren't enough to even stagger the thing for more than half a second and blow a tiny hole in his gut, I don't even think a max love beam is taking out Agito. Same thing for Big Raga. Like, because unless I'm mistaken, even his current max love beam isn't much bigger than, like, maybe Mahoraga's hand. So he at best gets one of Mahoraga's arms, then Mahoraga adapts him by being bada boom. But none of that matters. Of course it doesn't matter, because Jacob's Ladder. The only thing I could see Lumiere saying that could make this difficult, or different, or off, or consuming, or concerning in any way, shape, or form, is very specifically if he says Yuta can't use the 5-minute timer, because he needs to save it for Goda later on in the Jujutsu Showdown, and or Yuta can't use Domain, because we don't know if Yuta can use multiple domains at the same time in a day. But either way, if Yuta's able to use his 5-minute timer or his domain, Mahoraga and Agito get cooked. Now, if he traps one of them in the domain and the other's outside of it, then Sukuna tells the other to go shatter the domain, then Yuta's cooked again. But, like, it's so unlikely to happen. If he goes and fights Mahoraga and Agito, he's gonna domain. He's gonna use 5-minute. Like, there's no way. I don't even think Yuta would delude himself into believing that he's going to, in base, with unmanifested Rika, beat the brakes off of Agito and Mahoraga. Maybe one of them individually, but even then, I don't think he has the AP to put them down. And I think Yuta knows better than to think that he has the AP to put them down. But of course, let me not yap so much. If you made it to this far in the video, you can likely tell that I am, in fact, a certified, licensed, and registered yapper. So the link to Lumiere's video will be in the description down below, where you can check him out. He is a fantastic JJK-focused content creator, fantastic editing, fantastic thumbnails, fantastic everything. Go check him out. He'll be linked down below. And the link to the original video will also be down there as well. I like to yap. This shouldn't be too crazy, though, because, like, I'm not exactly sure what else I can say except for what I literally just said. Like, this is a matchup that really don't work well in the double curse technique to his favor, because their curse technique, they get Jacob's Ladder, they get instant shut off. But let's not waste more time. Let's hop right into the video itself. Here!
Summons Mahoraga and Agito. Sukuna summons Mahoraga and Agito. Gojo now has to fight a 3v1. Because of this, Yuta gets worried and says he is going to join the fight. Yuta is quickly stopped by everyone, and they basically tell him to let Gojo do his thing. But to me and many other,
except for my glorious king, Yuji Todori, who said, Yuta, do it! Throw your life away! But I think it's because Yuji didn't know. he didn't know about that backup 5-minute plan until it happened.
their fans, that left us wondering, could Yuta have actually taken on Mahoraga and Agito?
Yes. He would spread their cheeks with Jacob's Ladder. And only, like, that's the thing. The one thing I'll give real quick analysis-wise. Let me run through Yuta's entire bag. No, it is legit just Jacob's Ladder. Because Sky Manipulation is not doing anything but getting adapted to or immediately regenerated. Cleave, his Shrine. Like, unless, because here's the thing, right? There's the theory that Yuta could do his own version of Malevolent Shrine. Like, the thing that could wipe something out from existence, essentially, with enough time and enough patience if he, like, applies it to his domain. There is that. He should possibly have that. But, like, I'm not actually sure how effective that would be. Like, the question is, whose output do you think is higher? 15-finger Sukuna's or Yuta's? If you think 15-finger Sukuna has higher output, it'd be pretty hard to argue that he'd even take down Raga or Agito, just because we don't know how powerful his Malevolent Shrine would be. But that's like maybe one. Maybe I can give you Malevolent Shrine just because of how potent it would be. How that would interact with Agito is weird. Like, Agito had to literally be crushed and then burst in order to be defeated, but still, that could be entirely possible. So Agito may get got by Malevolent Shrine. Mahoraga would be a weird one, but with Yuta consistently attacking, it could possibly work. If he does the Malevolent Shrine apply to the domain. Sky Manipulation just ain't gonna work. Obviously, Drew's Shigami technique ain't gonna work. What else am I missing? Charles' Future Sight irrelevant. Like none of the other Yuta techniques. It's how versatile Yuta's bag is, how useful it is against traditional characters or like traditional sorcerers. Like any of those abilities are useful against pretty much anyone he's 1v1ing. I can't necessarily say they're all too useful against anyone, not anyone like of a higher, or no, anyone with like good regen speed or things with like infinite regen speed like Agito and Mahoraga. But let's see.
And in today's video, I am going to provide an answer to that question. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. First, I'm going to establish the setting for this fight. Since this is more of a combat analysis and not a what if, then I won't be including any interference from
Oh. Well then yeah, he diffs. Okay, I thought okay, so that removes the one limitation. I thought he was talking about, well no, he literally, this is why I say I'm illiterate and stupid and can't read. But like he literally said, no duh, could he actually stop them? Not if he did that. Because like if he did, they're cooked. And you may be like, what do you mean? Well actually, let me see if he explains it. If he doesn't explain it, then I'll quickly go into why if Yuta does this and either pops domain and can only do domain once a day, or burns the 5-minute timer, or activates it and can't shut that off, and then he burns it, then they're cooked in the long run. But let's see.
Sukuna or anyone else. We're strictly talking about Yuta versus Mahoraga and Agito. It will take place in Shinjuku though.
Okay. So it is. Okay, he doesn't go into it. But essentially, the main reason that he probably has to do it in a battle sense and not necessarily in a narrative sense is because ultimately, if Yuta had actually gone out there and sold the bag, he would have sold the bag. And you may be like, whoa, what do you mean sold the bag? He would have beat Mahoraga and Agito. And true. Let me think. Is this? I forget. What is this chapter? Is it 234? I think it's 234 when the start that happens. I haven't reviewed my Shuyuki Shodan in a little bit. But essentially, if Gojo's arm has already been cut off by Mahoraga Space Slash, it's too late. But if it's before that, then yeah, I think it actually is before that, right? I forget where in the timeline takes place. But actually, maybe if he goes in before that, because then Sukuna has to change fighting styles entirely, and then Gojo can actually give a much better fight. But then Sukuna would probably incarnate, and then like it caused a whole bunch of mess anyway. But that's the thing. Depending on when it happens, Yuta destroying Mahoraga and Agito is too late, and then Sukuna already gets Space Slash and defeats Gojo anyway. And then Yuta's burn out the 5-minute time limit. Yuta with burnt out 5-minute time limit cannot take Gojo's body lid with Kenjaku's technique, and then without Goda appearing and stalling Sukuna and taking out his domain again, Yuji and Todo die. Sukuna wins. Not a complicated scenario, assuming everything else goes the same. That's even assuming Yuta could... Actually, no, that could break everything. If Yuta domains and can't domain again, he's extra cooked. Because then we don't get the Yuta save. And Yuta versus Sukuna, and Yuta and Yuji versus Sukuna. So, like, literally, Yuta interfering is actually the bad time. It's why I didn't do a what if on it, because I'm like, oh, everybody just dies. Because Yuta is super integral to the Shuyuki Showdown. Shock horror, former main character, super integral to major final battle scenario. We'll see.
Not that it really matters, but it seems fitting considering the surrounding context of what inspired this video. Now, let's just get into the combat analysis. To be straight up, most of this battle is going to rely on Yuta's ability to be able to one-shot Mahoraga, but I think that can be covered quickly. Let's get out of the way some of the Mahoraga and Agito scaling, same with Yuta, then we'll get into the comparisons. Mahoraga is actually underrated in combat, since in the Gojo versus Sukuna fight, he's more of a support role just because Sukuna is that strong to where he steals the spotlight from Mahoraga. I feel like people underplay Mahoraga's combat ability. Mahoraga is able to keep up with Gojo and Sukuna, which is pretty significant because anyone else that would beat in that battle would be hindering either fighter. So if you think about it, Yuta admits that him hopping in to help Gojo would have been holding Gojo back. It'd be the same if someone like Urame tried to help Sukuna. In the battle of the strongest, even monsters like Urame and Yuta would be holding these guys back.
And that is a big thing, right? Like, you could argue for Mahoraga particularly, if Yuta goes in base and needs to slide the ring on or needs to activate domain, Mahoraga should viciously outstack Yuta. At least Sukuna Mahoraga. Because, like, here's the thing. There's always the constant debate, is Mahoraga uniform? Is he not uniform? Is he a mix? What are we doing here? But essentially, if you think Mahoraga is uniform, then the Mahoraga, or even not even, because we're talking about this Mahoraga, so it doesn't really matter, the Mahoraga discussion. But there is always that constant debate. But essentially, Mahoraga being relative at all to Gojo and Sukuna should definitely put him in a higher echelon than, like, every other character. At least in terms of physical stats. I mean, he should ragdoll Yuta. But the only issue Big Raga has is that he's very fast and very durable, but his AP is kind of questionable without Spatial Slash. And the reason I say that is because every single time he makes contact with Gojo, Gojo just... Like, think about it, unless I'm mistaken, the only times that Mahoraga does actual real damage to Gojo is, one, when he initially appears out of the shadows and catches Gojo off guard and slashes his chest open, which doesn't really do much, and then Spatial Slash. Other than that, Mahoraga does no damage to Gojo. And then, by proxy, it'd be hard to argue he just one-shot Yuta. He'd play bully ball with Yuta, as in, like, maybe he'd knock him around a bit, but I don't actually see him one-shotting Yuta. This is the same Yuta who can, like, face tank nerf dismantles, get thrown around by Sukuna. Like this is a pretty beefy guy. Like, get punched in the face by Ryu Ishigori and be mostly fine. Like, notably, I don't think Mahoraga is doing anything but maybe ragdolling Yuta around. He doesn't really have anything to put him down. And then by the time Yuta gets tired of being knocked around by Mahoraga, and if Rika doesn't get angry and fight Mahoraga for him, and you can definitely argue those two have relative stats just because of Rika's, like, narrative implications, guess what? Yuta pops domain, or slides on the ring and pops Jacob's ladder, and then Mahoraga dies. So, like, even though Mahoraga definitely should have way superior speed scaling, his AP, well, speed scaling and general durability, maybe, but, like, the AP is what's lacking. And that's the funny thing about a lot of the strongest, like, because of who they fight, their AP is weird in general. But then again, the upper, once you get to the upper or higher tiers in JJK, it becomes really a battle of Duranek and not really stats, or, like, hacks, essentially. When you think about it, I've mentioned this before in other videos. I'm going to make a whole video talking about why, like, your AP kind of don't matter in JJK. At least once you get to, like, the higher tier discussions, because of how many characters have Duraneg or something. That essentially allows them to bypass durability or work around your durability. But, let's see.
So the fact that Mahoraga and Agito are being pushed by Sukuna to help him means a lot, because he thinks they can hold up in this battle of the best sorcery in history. This isn't to say something like, Mahoraga and Agito are relative to Gojo and Sukuna, because they're not. Mahoraga and Agito were both struggling against Gojo for sure. They never got a clean hit on Gojo. That's not just him being overwhelmed by multiple attacks or him being off guard.
And even then, like, when he tags, like I mentioned, they tags, they don't do any damage. So, like, that's unfortunate. And Agito specifically is noted to just not keep up. Mahoraga is the only one who's even given the slight praise by Gojo. He's like, yeah, you guys, you're good, but you can't keep up like the others, and he blues her while missing an arm. So, like, very clearly. And we know the amount, how well your body is maintained drastically affects your output. So even though Gojo max output chanted that blue, that was a max output with a lost arm. And as we saw with Hana, a max output fresh Hana with a lost arm had a drastic drop in AP for her maximum technique. Lapse blue is just a regular max power application of a technique with Gojo missing an arm. So, like, that goes to show how far behind Agito was. And Mahoraga, I mean, he's better. He's better. Because Gojo says he's better, but, like, ain't too much better.
The true highlight of Mahoraga and Agito are just them not being left behind. The fact that they're persistent. Of course, out of the two, Agito...
And the main reason I think Sukuna summoned Agito in particular is literally just to stall Gojo out. It's very specifically to allow Mahoraga more time to adapt. Because ultimately, the main thing about Agito wasn't that it was doing any damage. It couldn't even touch Gojo, unless Mahoraga was touching Gojo. The main thing it could do was just survive. It could eat a Black Flash from Gojo and then just keep pushing. It could eat a regular boot and keep pushing. A red keep pushing. Like, that's the thing. It was just basically immortal. That's the only thing that Sukuna used it for. And it was a big body. And we love big bodies.
Agito is the weaker link and doesn't really display anything too crazy. Like, compared to Mahoraga. He got eliminated pretty quickly. Like, even Gojo himself says that about Agito, which puts Mahoraga ahead by a good amount. And this is a testament to what I've been saying. That Gojo's statement backs up the fact that Mahoraga is to be respected because he's hanging in there better than most of the verse could. It's even consistent with his name. Like, his name is Divine General Mahoraga. He isn't to be messed with. That name is of high power and authority. Mahoraga has no diff someone like Hirozu, who is insanely strong. Which, by the way, I have a video on how strong is Hirozu if you want to watch that after this video. But the point is that Mahoraga is actually insanely strong and overpowered. And we haven't even talked about his adaptation yet. At that point, if Mahoraga is able to adapt to your arsenal, start packing up your bags, because you're about to be sent to the gulag. With someone like Mahoraga, who is so OP, I started thinking, does Mahoraga have any anti-feats? Only one thing came to mind, and I simply don't agree with it. The anti-feat that some people bring up is that Sukuna said that maybe his three-finger self would have lost against Mahoraga, which obviously would downscale Mahoraga. But this statement simply just doesn't make sense. Mahoraga will survive his slashes from 15-finger Sukuna, and not even just slashes. Mahoraga survived Sukuna's domain. It got to the point where Sukuna had to use his divine technique to kill him. Mind you, 15 fingers is 75% of his full strength. Meanwhile, 3 finger is only 15%. These numbers aren't close. Sukuna's statement is just not true. Everything in Sukuna's arsenal should be weaker by 60%.
Okay, here's the thing though, and this is another hot debate. I mentioned the uniform Raga debates, like whether is a raw Raga the same as Sukuna Raga? Like, what's the mix on that? The other thing that's a hot debate, what do the fingers actually do? Because honestly, I can tell exactly what Sukuna means, because realistically, the fingers are never stated to increase his output. They aren't. Nowhere is that ever stated. What do the fingers do? They provide him more cursed energy. That's all they do. And they are possible ways for him to reincarnate. That's it. They're like, unless I'm mistaken, and once again, this is a thing where I am more than ready and willing to be wrong, but unless you can try and find a panel, you can try to pull up a statement somewhere, or a data book scanner, but the fingers don't do anything for his output. Because remember, people can cap at output. Like that stuff just hits limits. Once again, whether it just be physical reinforcement or output. So like, it sounds so stupid. Don't get me wrong, it sounds dumb. But like 3-finger Sukuna and 15-finger Sukuna, the difference is their amount of cursed energy. But like, we know you can hit a cursed energy cap limit. You know your output can cap out. Like, it didn't really matter. So honestly, I know if I had to hazard to guess what Sukuna meant there, it may have been able to beat him, as in he may have run out of cursed energy and wouldn't have been able to fuel Malevolent Shrine as much or fuel Furnace as much. He may have burned through those reserves too quickly. But even then, I'll admit, that one doesn't make too much sense either, mainly because of how efficient Sukuna is with his cursed energy, right? But like, that's what I think. I don't actually think there's much of a stat difference between any of the Sukunas. So if you are wondering, do I think a 1-finger Sukuna would violate most of the verse? Absolutely. Because he's just him. He still would have basically the same stats. But that's another debate for another time. I'll talk about how I think about the fingers and why I feel like it's weird that people will be like, hey, you know, that's a massive difference between 20-finger and 1-finger and 3-finger and 4-finger and 5. Like all the different variations. Like, curse energy amounts, yeah, but that's like all I got. But let's see. Especially, and notably, I say this because we not only do we know about curse energy caps, but because he was actually still able to supplement himself for a 20th finger by eating the mummy, which was what? Just residual curse energy. Didn't mention any part of his output being restored or anything like that. No, he literally just wanted the extra cursed energy that was stored in his mummy. But all that aside, let's hop back in.
And his 3-finger form. So this shouldn't be phased in Mahoraga. The only way this statement makes sense is if Sukuna is just talking about Fuga. I'm not gonna linger too much on this point, since I think it's pretty obvious that it's just not a valid anti-feat. Doesn't make sense, and it's not consistent with what the series has shown us.
However, it actually kind of is. Mainly because, like, if you read the Sukuna versus Mahoraga fight, Mahoraga isn't comp, bro. He's nowhere near comp. He's only comp, quote unquote, because Sukuna's letting him live. Mahoraga doesn't do any damage to Sukuna and tags him twice. Tags him on that first hit when Sukuna just blocks, and then Sukuna blocks again and gets knocked through the buildings. That's it. He does not tag him. The anime makes it even worse, in fact, showing how little comp Mahoraga is actually to Sukuna. So, like, if you think that Sukuna's stats stay uniform because he hits a physical cap on cursed energy reinforcement, and more cursed energy still doesn't matter, you will hit a cap on reinforcement. That's why Hikari doesn't have infinite AP or infinite Dura. Then guess what? 3-finger would still dogwalk Mahoraga, and 3-finger still dogwalk a majority of the verse. Like, except for, like, maybe Gojo, because he may run out of cursed energy. That's it. Like, that, like, and that sound, and don't be wrong, it sounds so stupid, it sounds so crazy, but, like, that's the thing. Mahoraga doesn't show enough relativity to 15-finger to Sukuna to argue that, like, maybe only 3 fingers amounts of cursed energy would do much of a difference. How many characters can you name in universe that would confidently be able to tank a 3-finger Malevolent Shrine? I can't name you many, because Malevolent Shrine automatically adjusts your AP, and Sukuna has more cursed energy than pretty much everybody else. And we even know your cursed energy reinforcements has limits. So, like, I don't know. Like, saying Mahoraga could lose 3-finger Sukuna ain't really an anti-feat, because it's hard to name many characters in universe unless you go with the idea that more fingers equals stronger output because reasons. I don't know. It just sounds a little deep. Like it sounds like Three Finger Sukuna just takes the verse on a walk. I know it sounds crazy to some. It even sounded crazy to me when I first like heard about it and thought about it, but like kind of makes sense because we don't have a statement that his fingers actually give him any more strength. They just give him more cursed energy. We know more cursed energy doesn't automatically equal more strength. Ability.
Not only that, but it might be important to also mention that it's Megami's Mahoraga. Sukuna's Mahoraga is probably even stronger, but that point isn't too important. Now,
once again, we don't really have evidence for that. Like, it sounds so stupid to say. Like, obviously, a Mahoraga being someone with more energy and more power, more that he'd have to be stronger. But like, what physical difference does he have? Like, the thing I'll give the other Shikigami when I'm like comparing Megami Shikigami to Sukuna Shikigami is that they do quantifiably look different and are bigger. Like, Divine Dog is just bigger, even in a non-solid manifestation form. Myriad Elephant is just bigger than Max Elephant. And Nue is unique because in the redraws it's confirmed he's fused with Orochi. But like, still, that's different. Mahoraga, like, he looks the exact same. That's one of my biggest disappointments about Sukaraga. He's the exact same guy. He may be slightly bigger though, but even then, it's weird. It's weird and hard to tell. So like, let's see.
I think we've sufficiently covered Mahoraga's strength. Now we'll talk a little bit about Yuta. Don't worry, I'm not gonna prolong the video unnecessarily like some people do. Most of you are already
It's me. I'm people. Jacob's Ladder DG.
aware of Yuta scaling, so we'll just go straight to the point and only give a highlight of necessary information. So to start off, Yuta's Love Beam is around the same level as Ryu's Blast, who had the highest output in the Culling games, so already this is a good contender for something that could destroy Mahoraga in one blast. The downside to this is that it is a charge up, which might not be enough time for him to let it off. Yuta is called the second strongest modern sorcerer, which I think is true, but a lot of people hear that and freak out, so let me explain myself a little bit. Out of the heavy hitters, Yuta is just on the higher end, but Hakari and Maki are still on the same level. They're comparable but not exact. Yuta himself was confident in his ability to take on Mahoraga and Agito, which doesn't seem unrealistic. Like, I don't take...
This is another statement where I say, like, note how he says the against two Shikigami. I think he is, like, and once again, this is me putting thoughts in Yuta's head, words in Yuta's mouth. I genuinely think right here he's thinking about Jacob's Ladder. Like, unless he's literally going out there to stall. That's the other thing, right? You could argue the main reason Yuta would go out there, but saving for the 5-minute plan and saving his domain for the Sukuna fight, and obviously saving himself for Kenjaku, is that he would literally go out there and let himself get bullied. Like, he'd have Rika fight Agito, or he would fight Agito, because obviously that she's the less dangerous one, and Yuta is weaker than Rika. I hope base Yuta being weaker than a manifested Rika isn't a crazy take in the modern day. But like, he would probably fight Agito and just stall it and distract it, and Rika would fight Mahoraga and just stall it and distract it, and then Gojo and Sukuna would just be fighting in the background. Like, that could be it. But even then, if we're talking about defeat them, stop them, he's probably thinking about Jacob's Ladder. And that's why he says the Shikigami. Obviously because they are Shikigami. But also because Jacob's Ladder auto turns off curse techniques. So it just turn off the Shikigami, which would immediately be effective and stop them.
His statement to mean that he'll beat them, but that he'll be able to take off some heat from Gojo. So let's cover any of the other abilities that could help Yuta get rid of Mahoraga. To be honest, the only one that could maybe help is
Oh, and I want to talk about the Love Beam. It's too small. That sounds like such a strange insult, but remember, the Binding Vow amped. Death Binding Vow from Prime Rika, pure strongest Rika, give me everything, awaken, open your third eye. It only took off Geto's arm. Now, I don't have the exact measurements of either of those two fellas, but take one look at Geto and take one look at Mahoraga and tell me which one's bigger. That sounds so weird, but like, tell me which one's bigger. It's obviously Raga. So like, Raga loses an arm from Yuta's strongest base output attack. They can only use while fully manifested, by the way. Mahoraga heals the arm. He is now immune to Yuta's cursed energy output. So like, yeah, that wouldn't work.
Jacob's Ladder, but Yuta's Jacob's Ladder just seems weaker than Hana's, since it didn't really do anything to an already weakened Sukuna.
Now, I disagree with that. And honestly, I think the application is different. The main reason Yuta's Jacob's Ladder didn't do anything to Sukuna is because he didn't want to kill Sukuna. Like, he very specifically held it back. He literally, like, he flickered it on like a flashlight. Like, in fact, do I have a flashlight nearby? I don't, but like, he literally, like, he turns on max output, burns Sukuna, and immediately turns it off. You can see that in the panel too, where the beam is hitting, the effects are sparking on him, then it instantly stops, because he does not want to kill Sukuna. And even then, it burns Sukuna to a crisp, stuns him hard enough that Yuta can run in and pressure him with his blade, tear his arm off, and then Yuji can get in and do that hit. And that was against a full body, true finger, 20 finger Sukuna. In prime Heian body. And the difference between Sukuna and Agito and Big Raga is their curse techniques and he's not. He's still a dude. He's still a sorcerer. And by proxy, I think Yuta would just blast away the both of them with Jacob's Ladder. He would just immediately delete them. Because he wouldn't turn it off. And they're techniques, so they automatically get shut off. Notably, the two characters we see taking Jacob's Ladder are Sukuna, who can't die at either of those points. Guilty.
Just seems weaker than Hana's, since it didn't really do anything to an already weakened Sukuna. Meanwhile, Hana nearly ended the series where she hit hers on 15 finger Maguna.
And to be fair, that was also a 15 finger Sukuna who was freshly incarnated. So like, there's that. And also, I think arguing that Yuta's is weaker than Hana's means you need to argue that Hana has higher output than domain amped Yuta. Hana has higher output than domain amped Yuta. Does that even sound right? Remember, they're using the same technique. The exact same technique. Do you want to make that argument? Because I sure don't. Because I don't think there is one.
Considering that Mahoraga survived Shrine, his wheel didn't even get destroyed with Fuga, I don't think Yuta's Jacob's Ladder is doing the job. It's not going to extinguish Mahoraga's adaptability because it's not a curse technique. It's an...
But he's a curse technique, though. But, okay, so wow. Okay, so now I'm wondering, where's the video going to go then, huh? If it's not Jacob's Ladder, GG, what is he saying then? Then Yuta loses. If he thinks that's not going to work. They are a technique, though. I'm very much in the camp that if it's a technique, Jacob's Ladder turns it off, because that's the whole thing about Hana's ability. But if you're okay, let's see it.
Ability, which is something the series has distinguished. And Mahoraga isn't a curse, he's a Shikigami. So Jacob's Ladder isn't gonna be as effective. For sure, I think Love Beam would be the thing that can eliminate Mahoraga. Another factor.
It's funny. We are on the exact opposite spectrum of that. I think Love Beam is worthless because it's too small. Especially considering Yuta wouldn't be doing a death binding, meaning he'd be weaker than JJK01. Well, on top of that, I think Jacob's Ladder wipes because he is a technique. And notably, you may be like, well, what did Jacob's Ladder, and maybe that's what he means, right? Like, ultimately, it wouldn't stop his adaptation or would only slow him down because it would only stop his adaptation. The thing about that is we know there is a distinction between a curse technique and an ability. So, Nue is the application of the 10 Shadows technique, but it has the ability to produce lightning. Divine Dawn doesn't have an ability, but like that's the difference, right? So like Mahoraga still is a technique using its unique ability that's tied into its technique nature. It's still a technique though. So we get Jacob's Ladder. I think that's what I think, right? I mean, maybe I'm crazy though. Let's see.
I would like to talk about is how Mahoraga's adaptation would handle Yuta. Because since Yuta copies techniques, then he just has a bunch of different techniques in store. So would that mean that Mahoraga would have to adapt to every single one of them individually? Or could he just adapt to all of them just by adapting to the copy technique? Realistically, I don't think this matters much because if it isn't something that could one-shot Mahoraga or destroy him before he could adapt, of course he'll just end up adapting anyways. As we already covered, the only true contender to do that is Love Beam. The other techniques are good, but they don't have that one-shot onslaught potential. This should be a pretty good fight. I mean, Mahoraga and Agito are going to be applying a lot of pressure, but luckily for Yuta, it isn't a 2v1. It's a 2v2 since he has Rika. I think the person who would have the most trouble is Agito, just because he's the weaker one out of the three, but even then, he's still somewhat of a threat.
Unironically, fully manifested Rika, or arguably really base Rika, unmanifested Rika, could grab Agito and fly into the sky, and there's nothing Agito could do about it. Agito's electricity is not freeing it from Rika. It's not affecting Rika enough. Like, nothing that Agito has or has been proven to have is doing anything against Rika. So, like, Rika could actually literally hold Agito hostage. And ironically enough, this may say, and this is gonna sound dumb, I think it could do the same for Mahoraga too. Like, I think because once again, Mahoraga just doesn't have enough feats. Mahoraga doesn't have enough feats to say like it could break out physically of fully manifested Rika just grabbing it and flying into the sky. What's Mahoraga gonna do? Kick her in the face? Cut her with a sword it can't use because its arms are held? Like, what is actually Mahoraga going to do to Rika? Maybe I'm glazing Rika too much, but hey, I'm a Yuta Yucker, dog. Let's see.
And can't get rid of easily because if Yuta slices off a limb, Agito has RCT. So Yuta's gonna need something a little bit more powerful to take care of Agito. The problem is, if he starts using his other techniques, this gives Mahoraga the time to start analyzing and adapting to the technique. I think you
like see that? Look at that. That's a black flash from Gojo, and it does nothing. You mean to tell me a black? Well, of course it's a fatigue Gojo. Oh, okay. But yeah, a black flash, amped, blue punching Gojo, barely blows out Agito's guts. Love Beam is not taking that thing out. Let's see.
Yuta's best chance at beating Mahoraga and Agito are just by summoning Domain and doing something similar to what he tried to do to Sukuna. What Yuta should do is try to use Curse Speech to freeze Mahoraga and just use Love Beam. The only problem with that is, first of all, Curse Speech isn't going to give Yuta enough time to charge up the Love Beam and blast Mahoraga. Like, if that's all it took, he would have just done it against Sukuna, and Yuta didn't do it against Sukuna, so it probably doesn't give him enough time. Second of all, Mahoraga needs to be basically still get hit by the Love Beam. And do you really think Mahoraga's just gonna stand still and let himself get hit by Love Beam?
Fight you, I would kill you.
John, do you think? So John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
Like, come on, that's obviously not happening, and there isn't gonna be a sure hit from Love Beam because it's not a curse technique, it's just a CE blast. In the off chance that Curse Speech is able to freeze Mahoraga and Agito, then they both would just get wiped by Love Beam. But it seems really unlikely. And
once again, I just don't think Love. Am I? See, that's the thing. Half of me is a Yuta Yucker. The other half of me is like, I just don't think it's that big or strong enough. Is that crazy? Y'all know what I mean, though, right? When I say Love Beam just isn't big enough, that sounds so weird to say, but like it's not big enough though. Like it would have to be the scale of Ryu's Granite Blast that he launches at the start of the Yuta, Uro, and Ryu trio fight. Like it has to be that big to consume Mahoraga and Agito at the same time. Not talking about either of them individually, but we know Yuta's Love Beam ain't that. Especially the one he has access to. It's just not that. So like, I don't know. If he really believes Jacob's Ladder is that's it. Jacob's Ladder doesn't work for one reason or another, even though there are curse techniques and this would be shut off by Jacob's Ladder, at least in my opinion. Then Yuta loses. He doesn't have anything else in his kit, unless you go with like pseudo malevolent shrine arguments, and then he maybe pulls up Furnace somehow, but like that's it.
And that's another thing. Agito is gonna be there too. And if Rika tries to stop Agito, then the Love Beam just isn't happening because Yuta needs Rika by his side. Maybe if it was just Mahoraga, it'd be easier. But yeah, since it's a charge up, this really puts Yuta in a bad position. So then in Yuta's domain, if he's just using techniques over and over, he's just gonna be giving Mahoraga free adaptation points. And if it keeps going like that, Mahoraga will just adapt and end up beating Yuta. At least when it comes to Agito, I can see Yuta for sure overwhelming him with the Icebreaker and the other techniques until he eliminates him. If he gets Agito out early on, this is obviously good for Yuta because then he can focus on the Love Beam strategy. But once again, this just doesn't seem like a feasible option for Yuta. Same thing goes for Jacob's Ladder. If you think that's something that can one-shot Mahoraga, then fine. But Mahoraga needs to be still for it to be effective. And Curse...
Well, does he though? If it's in the domain, he doesn't. It's a sure hit, so it would it would literally cook him alive and vaporize him. And then if it's outside the domain, do y'all remember how big Jacob's Ladder was? Even when a one-armed Hana was using it, that thing was huge. And like obviously Mahoraga, at least the one he's fighting, doesn't have range. So like he would have to go into the Jacob's Ladder to try and attack Yuta. Same thing with Agito. Neither of them have range. They would auto cook themselves because like they're smart, but they aren't that smart. So like they're gonna attack the guy who's attacking them. They're gonna see Yuta fly up into the heavens, pull out a trumpet, and start. I'm sorry, I can't do trumpet noises. And then boom, they accidentally vaporize themselves by lunging for Yuta, who's in the middle of a gigantic heavenly light tractor beam that would one-shot both of them. It's like, I don't know. Let's see.
Speech isn't exactly something that stops high tier characters for a long time. So Mahoraga will probably just end up being able to escape. Not only just escape, but then end up adapted to Curse Speech. And at that point, it's just GG's. In conclusion, Mahoraga and Agito probably take the dub over Yuta. Mahoraga on his own is already a challenge, but then you have the inconvenience of Agito applying pressure too. Now, if Yuta can get rid of Agito quickly, or he can freeze Agito and Mahoraga for enough time and get off a full Love Beam blast, then Yuta wins. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe.
Let's see.
If you guys have any video ideas, make sure to let me know.
Ooh, he's one of those. 2 other Lumiere videos that I'm going to have to react to. Ooh, Lumiere, I've been letting you cook, and I see you've been cooking delicious meals. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong, editing's fire. Interesting, I think this JJK Battlegrounds, but still definitely a W video. But that's interesting. I am in a completely, and in fact, I almost want to scroll through the comments, but I won't. I may do that on my own time. But I actually do genuinely wonder. That's a. What do you guys think? Am I tweaking? I may be tweaking. It would not be the first time I've been tweaking. But do y'all think Jacob Slider wouldn't one-shot Mahoraga and Agito? Their techniques, they get turned off because they're in Jacob Slider solely light, which negates all curse techniques. Only reason Sukuna didn't get immediately negated is because 1, first person didn't want to do it, and he was dying anyway, and 2, Yuta didn't want to kill Sukuna, so he like flickered it on and off like a flashlight. How's it I think? I don't know. What do you guys think, though? Do you guys agree with him? Do you think ultimately there's no way Yuta could beat the both of them together because he just doesn't have it and Jacob's Ladder wouldn't one-shot them, even if they are curse techniques? Or do you guys agree with me and think that Jacob's Ladder GG? I don't know. Literally, that's up to you. But if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave... I did Double Trouble recently. Leave Trouble of the Double. I'm trying to get a little bit around. Leave Trouble of the Double in the comment section down below. I did thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is... Wait. Where is it? Gosh darn it. This always happens. No. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off.